They say why. Willard. Why they wanted to terminate my command.
I was sent on a classified mission, sir.
It's no longer classified. Is it? What did they tell you?
They told me that you had gone totally insane. And that your methods were unsound.
Are my methods unsound?
I don't see any method at all.
Hello again. Essay here. Well, if you've been paying attention to the news, particularly what's been happening in California, you know, all those fires. Well, at the time of this recording, those fires are still going on. I think it's the morning of the 14th, January. Well, anyway, if you've been paying attention, you know why those fires are still going on. Because any institution, any series of institutions, they can have problems, minor problems, even systemic problems. And of course, if the problems don't get fixed, they can metastasize and can threaten the entire system. Indeed, anyone who remembers the old Charlie Chaplin film, Modern Times, probably knows what I'm talking about. And you say, wait, what? Yeah, there's a great scene in the film where Charlie Chaplin's character is supposed to be working on a big machine, and he basically screws up, and the machine starts malfunctioning. And when he tries to fix it, he gets sucked into the gears, and his little man goes all around the gears and everything. It's kind of ridiculous. And indeed, another film from that time period, Metropolis, that German film, had a similar scene, except it kind of happened, except when the big machine started to malfunction, and the people who ran the machine didn't quite know how to stop the malfunction, the machine broke and everything in the metropolis started to malfunction. You know, lights start going on and off, the plumbing stopped working. Indeed, if you ever saw that film, there's a great scene where after the big machine broke down, the underground cities where the poor people lived, the rich people lived up on top and the poor people lived underneath. Yeah, typical. Started flooding. Yeah. Well, anyway, despite the analogy, this video is not so much about the fire. It's about why the fire has grown out of control the way it has. Now, Dr. Steve Turley, a former college professor, but pretty cool dude, he has this, I'm going to show a snippet of a video that he made, where he gets down to the nitty-gritty about why everything is happening in California the way it is. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
Jack Hibbs, a California pastor, and yesterday during his sermon, he had a few choice words for the Democrats that are destroying his state. Check this out.
We have watched the absolute exposure of the most incompetent, reserve your applause to the end. Nobody can hide from this. Nobody can hide from it. There's no excuses. This is the most wealthiest state in the 50. We pay the most in taxes, we pay the most in gas, we pay the most in electricity. You name it, if it's in California, we pay the most for it. Why? Why? Because of our government. Why? Because of things that Sacramento does because they can. Our flag of this state is an absolute abject lie. The flag says California Republic. It is not. A republic is where the people decide and the people have their way. What has happened to California? And you prove me wrong. I challenge you today, if you don't like what I'm about to say. California has been under unmitigated Democrat 100% power control. Democrat. Supermajority. What does that mean, supermajority? It means nobody can oppose their decision making. And now you've got it. You've got a situation where a catastrophe came and the billions of dollars that you and I gave was diverted to other woke, stupid Democrat projects. That's not hyperbole. It is a fact. You don't like it, change your party.
Now, if you don't know what he's talking about there, Biden actually claimed that the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power was to blame because they shut off power to lines that were connected supposedly to fire hydrants, preventing the hydrants from working. So it was a bureaucratic snafu in a sense. We now know that's simply not true. The hydrants weren't working because there was no water. And there was no water because water was diverted to the San Francisco estuary in order to try to save an endangered fish, the Delta smelt. So mismanagement from Sacramento is why the hydrants didn't work. And then he mentioned the utterly inexcusable behavior of LA Mayor Karen Bass, who not only was in Africa during the fires, but had literally nothing. And nothing. Not one word to say when she got off the plane back in LA while her city was burning. And then he mentioned a viral photo of Gavin Newsom sharing a laugh at the Case Camp in Malibu as firefighters were continuing to struggle against the growing and expanding inferno that was claiming even more lives. Now the death tolls hit over 20 since the weekend. And so Pastor Hibbs is calling on all Christians throughout the Golden State to rise up and replace these incompetent and frankly evil leaders. Now, if you don't know Pastor Jack Hibbs, he's the pastor of Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. He's no stranger in taking on the state of California. Check this report out.
Strong words today from State Attorney General Rob Bonta. His office is suing the Chino Valley Unified School District for a policy requiring parents to be notified if their child is transgender.
This policy has managed to violate multiple constitutional rights of our students, multiple statutory rights of our students, their right to privacy, their right to equal protection, their right to be free from discrimination.
Bonta announcing the lawsuit in downtown LA. His goal is to stop enforcement of a rule passed by the Chino Valley School Board last month. Requires parents to be notified if their children change their gender identity. Bonta adds outing kids before they're ready could cause serious psychological harm, may even put them in physical danger in households that bash LGBTQ lifestyles.
Now, over the last couple of years, Calvary Chapel, under Hibbs' leadership, has actually spearheaded a takeover of their county public school board, a takeover that's effectively turned the schools all throughout the county back in alignment with the far more conservative values of the vast majority of parents. But as you saw, the ultra-woke California Attorney General, as part of this DEI dictatorship in Sacramento that Pastor Hibbs is talking about here, he announced immediately that the state would sue the Chino Valley Unified School District Board of Education over this policy requiring schools to inform parents if there's a change in their child's gender identification. That's worthy of being sued as far as the lunatics in Sacramento are concerned. They're actually suing the Board of Education for the requirement of informing parents that their kids are questioning their gender. So that's why, gang, in my view, this goes way beyond calling for resignations. It is that most certainly is happening, I'm glad to say. Here's Stephen A. Smith adding his name to the growing calls for both the governor and the LA mayor to resign.
They got to go.
They got to go. You know what? They got to go. I don't give a damn if they do. After what I've seen last week, they got to go. They got. I'm done. I'm done, Kevin. I'm done.
Steve, sometimes there are natural disasters you can't do a damn thing about. When a hurricane hits your house down in Florida, what can you do? Are you yelling at the politicians to stand out there and stop the winds?
Kev, I'm not going off about the fires. The fires is not their fault. But when firefighters are standing there and saying there's not enough water in the fire hydrant.
That's true.
When Donald Trump asked for water to be pumped from Canada into the LA system and Gavin Newsom opposed that. When you're hearing about environmentalists compelling him to protect smelt and little fish and salmon at the expense of LA citizens, of California citizens, Kevin, I don't need much else than that. I just don't. Maybe you're nicer than me. Maybe I'm too cruel. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it.
Well, while I'm very happy to see that Stephen A. Smith finally seems to be getting it, I think this goes way, way, way beyond calling for resignations. And Jesse Waters of Fox News thinks so as well. He is now calling for a federal takeover of California. Take a look.
Primetime's calling for a federal takeover of California. When a state becomes this dangerous and the government becomes this reckless, where the lives of millions of American citizens are being destroyed, their homes obliterated, their infrastructure annihilated, we can't wait for a recall election. This is an issue of national security. This is a public health emergency. We know they have public health emergency powers. Remember the pandemic? Invoke them. The elected officials in California can't be trusted. They're criminally negligent. Look at what we're seeing. This is a war scene. And if anyone thinks that people who are responsible for this catastrophe are going to somehow rebuild, you're out of your mind. If they're left in charge to rebuild LA, they're going to steal the money. Nothing's going to get rebuilt. Everyone's going to get screwed. This is biblical level destruction. And the city of LA is hosting the Olympics in 4 years. There's no way we can showcase LA to the world. A full federal takeover is needed. Invoke the Stafford Act. The state's overwhelmed. Martial law might have to be declared.
Well, we've been saying on this channel, well, many have been saying that Los Angeles voters are basically reaping what they've sowed. In the end, they voted for this. I just texted a good friend of mine in the classical Christian school movement who's a professor at a Christian university out in the LA area, just to make sure he was doing okay. And he's fine, thank God. But he didn't mince words in his text back to me. LA is getting what they voted for. 64% of LA County voted for Kamala Harris. They voted for this Democrat incompetence. But what Jesse Waters is getting at here is that when your voting affects the security of the rest of the nation, when your incompetent leaders that you put into office pose a bona fide national security risk, that's when it's time for the federal government to step in. We are so beyond simply resignations here, because who's going to replace them? Who's going to replace Gavin Newsom? Who's going to replace this utter incompetent moron LA mayor? Who's going to replace that lunatic attorney general who's suing school boards because they want informed parental consent? I mean, California has been taken over by lunatics. And that's exactly what Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson were just talking about, how California represents really nothing less than a literal, genuine, civilizational collapse.
Yeah, we were just talking about the wildfire situation and how crazy it is that they spent $24 billion last year on the homeless.
Yeah.
And what do they spend on preventing these wildfires?
Zero.
Not zip.
Zip. And in 2019, I think Newsom said, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. And then on top of that, they cut the water off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all funny. And then I think all our tax dollars probably went for Gavin's hair gel. I don't know, but it's like, it's sad. It's like the place is just on fire.
Well, the whole state is just so poorly managed. It's so it's so frustrating and confusing. And then he gets on TV and pretends like everything's great. Mm-hmm. And California's the best. We have the best state. We have the most amazing economy. And like, you're out of your fucking mind, dude. You've ruined this state. Like, personally ruined it.
Well, it's the same team that was up in San Francisco, and they came down to L.A. and they're doing what they did in San Francisco. And San Francisco's kind of like apocalyptic now,
Yeah.
I went there and it's just like people, homeless. It's a mess.
It's just unbelievable that society can crumble that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It really is unbelievable.
It doesn't take long.
No.
Yeah. I read a book once by Jared Diamond called Collapse.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read that book?
Yeah.
Crazy, right? It says all the things you need for a civilization to cave in and collapse. And a lot of the things are present. All those earmarks, the precursors of a collapse, they're present in our time. So it's an interesting observation.
Yeah.
Okay, you saw that. Now, of course, you will probably say, yeah, well, you get what you pay for. If the people in California vote a bunch of morons in to basically run their affairs, well, you get what you get. And you know what? I do not disagree. I do not disagree at all. That's why I can't vote for these people. I didn't vote for Newsom. I didn't vote for Bass. And I definitely did not vote for Cackling Harris or Joe Biden, I might add. Nope. As Forrest Gump famously said, stupid is as stupid does. You know what? He's not wrong. But as you saw in Dr. Turley's video, what's going on in California is gone way beyond just mere idiocracy. Indeed, if you probably remember in his video, he mentioned a book called Collapse by Jared Diamond. Now, of course, some of you who are familiar with Jared Diamond, I don't have to explain to you who he is, but for all you people ignorant, he's basically a scientist and historian. And he's been around for a long time. I think the guy's like getting close to 90 now. But he's wrote a series of books. In fact, his most famous book was Guns, Germs, and Steel, where he's talking about how societies rise and fall with the with the whims of the people who live there. And then he wrote other books like The World Until Yesterday. But anyway, I'm going to focus on his book Collapse. Now, that book came out in the early 2000s. Yeah, right around I think it came out, I think it was during George W.'s second term. But anyway, in the book, Diamond was talking about why societies fail and why they succeed. And I'm thinking, okay, because if you've read a lot of history books, you know that some societies have prevailed and some have not. Indeed, anyone who's ever read the Iliad is aware of societies that fail. But in the case of Dr. Diamond's book, he was focusing on certain things in particular that could cause a society to basically hit the skids. And some of the things he focused on was, and wait for it, I know this is going to sound like a broken record, but please bear with me. He focused primarily on things like environmental problems. Like what? Well, like toilets are backing up, I suppose. Or in the case of London during the 19th century, toilets didn't really run at all. And I remember reading those stories that the London sewer system of the 19th century was pretty foul. Indeed, they had to send people down there all the time to remove the solid waste because the solid waste didn't move on its own. And you could say, whoa, that sounds like gross. Yeah, no kidding. But anyway, and he, Dr. Diamond, also spoke about other things such as wars, climate change, disease factors. You know, like for example, when the Europeans came to North America, they brought all those nasty social diseases like syphilis, gonorrhea, smallpox, and the people who were already living here, they had no immunity, and you saw what happened. They all basically died. Yeah, like the Aztecs, for example. That's a great example. I remember reading that story as a kid, how not long after the Spaniards showed up, I think it was what, I think over 20 million Aztecs died of various diseases that the Spaniards brought with them, and the people had no immunity. You know, they all died. Yeah, well, that's what Dr. Diamond talks about in his book. And I have to admit, I didn't read the book properly. I read the Cliff Note version. What can I say? I'm lazy. But in the book, he spoke about how various problems can occur in various societies and how things can really just go off the rails. For example, he spoke about, for example, the fall of Carthage. And of course, yeah, everyone knows about that because damn Romans went in there and just killed everybody. You know, no prisoners, no mercy, and just said, no, fuck these people, let's kill them. And there you go. But then he spoke about other societal collapses. For example, people talk about Greenland a lot nowadays. Well, long ago in the past, early Vikings, Norsemen, they inhabited Greenland, but they didn't stay. Why? Well, we expect it's all ice and snow. And he spoke about how those early Norse settlers, when they arrived there, they tried to set up a colony, but it didn't work out. And if I remember correctly, yeah, they in his book, Dr. Diamond spoke about how one of the reasons why the Norse colony collapsed was the Norsemen didn't want to eat fish. And I'm thinking, wait, what? I know that sounds ridiculous because anyone knows anything about Vikings, you know, those guys are out in the open ocean all the time. And you say, mean these guys don't eat fish? I mean, what the hell they eat then? Yeah, well, apparently they eat something else, but they don't eat fish. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, if they're talking about sushi, hey, join the club. I don't like sushi either, but let's not get into the weeds, okay? But anyway, Dr. Diamond also spoke about Easter Island. I remember reading that story long ago, how the people of Easter Island, they basically ate themselves out of house and home. In other words, they had too many people and not enough resources. And if you ever been to Easter Island, or at least seen enough pictures, you saw those damn statues everywhere, those totems. And the damn people who lived there, they basically destroyed the island because I remember years ago reading how the Easter Island, before the humans showed up, was basically like a Polynesian island, covered with trees. But in order to make those totems, those statues, the humans who arrived there, they were chopping down all the trees and basically using them as tools to move those statues. Remember, these people didn't have like a bunch of Caterpillar, heavy lifting cranes and other equipment. They had to use what they had. And over time, they destroyed all the trees to move those damn statues. And because they had no trees, they had no basically material to build homes with. And of course, if they were like coconut trees or banana trees, because they had nothing to eat. And indeed, if I remember correctly, when I think the Spaniards showed up there, they only found a few of those people left on the island, and they had basically resorted to cannibalism. Yeah, precisely. But anyway, Dr. Diamond also speaks about the Aziris down there in the Pueblo. And I remember that place. I remember reading about it as a kid, how these people lived down there in, I think it was in primarily Arizona and New Mexico, somewhere in that general neighborhood, and how they, in one particular well-preserved, city, or, small town or village, that's built into the side of a mountain. Supposedly, when the place was built there was all kinds of, flora and fauna, plenty of food for the people to survive. But then the environment in that area changed, and the water went away, and while in the water, the animals went away. And the people basically said, hey, we can't stay here. There's nothing here for us. There's no food, there's no water, and we can't stay here. So they picked up and left. And yet that mountain village that they built into the side of the mountain, it's still there now, today. And I can't remember if the Spaniards found it or regular white folks found it. I mean, that part I'm iffy about. And of course, the big one, the Mayans. He spoke about that in his book, and I remember reading stories about the Mayans, about how, for some unknown reason, the Mayans just disappeared as a people. And since they didn't leave behind any written records, there's a big question mark as to what happened to them. And I have to admit, yeah. Now, of course, if I remember correctly, the Mayan civilization collapsed quietly on its own. I think it's around 1000 BC. No, I think it's 1000 AD, sorry. Yeah, but I think they were around since 1000 BC, but by 1000 AD, the Mayan civilization collapsed and left behind all those, stone pyramids and whatnot, but no people. And to this day, there's a big question mark as to what happened to these people. No one knows. And there you go. And then, of course, Diamond also talks about other peoples, such as the people living in the Solomon Islands. Apparently, they had a problem maintaining their civilization at first, but then they eventually able to get their act together and sort things out. Along with the people in in New Guinea, how supposedly they eventually were able to develop agriculture long ago in the past, and thus they were able to get their civilization going. And then he also speaks about what was going on in Tokugawa, Japan, and how they were on the verge of doing something crazy with their forest. Because if anyone's ever read about the Tokugawas, during that time period, during the Shogun, knows that when it came to pure economics, that period in Japan was kind of and then I'm trying to remember the proper term, but it basically means that they had a huge economic downturn. Not enough to make the collapse, but they became very insular. And believe me, there's been multiple books and even films talking about that time period. And thus, by the time when the Tokugawas, who were there for almost 300 years, finally met up with Westerners, they found out the hard way that they had been so insular that the world basically passed them by. But yeah, Dr. Diamond speaks about them. And then he talks about recent, civilizational collapses, like what happened in Rwanda when the people went crazy and killed each other. He also talks about Haiti, and why is it that you have that. Remember, anyone who looks at a map knows that Haiti is part of Hispaniola, and the other side of the island is Dominican Republic. And of course, anyone who's ever been to Dominican Republic knows that place, okay, technically it is a third world country, but it's not really bad. Not like next door Haiti. And he talks about why is it that you have these two countries sharing a single island in the modern world. One is generally a functioning society, and one isn't. And he talks about that in his book. But anyway, Dr. Diamond, he, in his book, he speaks about how basically how all modern societies have basically 12 things that they have to deal with in order to, persevere or fail. And in the list was, he spoke about deforestation, soil erosion, water management, that's very important. Overhunting, overfishing, eating yourself out of house and home, as well as overpopulation and potential climate changes, like I mentioned with those Azeri people in the American Southwest. And of course, finally, more modern problems, like, for example, too much pollution. And of course, anyone who's ever seen old films from the 19th and early 20th century knows that, yeah, early technological man, yeah, they didn't think much about the environment. But yeah, he talks about all that stuff. But anyway, then you're probably saying, what's that to do with California? I'm getting to that part. Okay? Anyway, Dr. Turley, he says that, yeah, it seems like the leadership of California, these people are so incompetent that despite their claims of being conscious, having being pro-environment and et cetera, he says that basically these people are doing everything right if you want the society in California to collapse. For example, in the case of those fires, we found out that a lot of the water resources, and let's not pretend California has a lot of water resources just all piled up there in the Bay Area, but anyway. And he talks about how because these people basically have their priorities kind of screwed up, they're more focused on, insignificant animals like the smelt fish, instead of worrying about the people who put them in office, namely the citizens of California. And because of that, water resources that should have been available to the people in Southern California weren't there. And that's just one great example. And then, of course, as if you were paying attention to that video, and of course there were others, if you called these people out, saying, hey, governor, hey, mayor, what's the matter you? Why are you making so many mistakes? Why are you doing wrong? And instead of accepting the fact that they're making mistakes, they're sitting there making excuses. And when I mean excuses, I ain't talking about, pointing fingers at people, say, oh no, it's not my fault, it's those people's fault. No, they're making excuses that are just unbelievably lame. Like, for example, there's a video right now where NBC News was trying to talk to Governor Newsom about why was it that various dams that he, the governor, basically has responsibility for were destroyed, that could have been used to help have that water resource available to send to Southern California. And he tried to claim that it was disinformation. And to his credit, the NBC News report called him out and said, no, it's not disinformation. You actually did that. And oh my God, as you saw in that video, I mean, these people. There's the Sunny Halston over at The View, and you say that old show? Yeah, just stick with me. She had nerve to claim that because people were complaining about the fire department in Southern California, the LA County Fire Department, was so focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that they basically forgot that their one job is to put out fires. And she tried to claim that by complaining about their lack of focus was racist. And of course, right now you're probably saying, wait, what? Yeah, I know. It's stupid. But yeah, this is what happens when you have incompetence. And of course, at a certain point, that incompetence gets downright criminal. It's almost as if it's one thing if a person makes mistakes. I mean, people slip on banana peels all the time. But it's another thing if you're taking a bunch of bananas, peeling the bananas, and throwing them out in front of you. That way you deliberately slip on each banana peel that you throw in your own path. In other words, it's almost like these people are doing it deliberately. And then you have to ask, why? Yes, why indeed? Well, unfortunately, I don't have the wisdom of Solomon, so I don't think I can answer that question. But as you saw in Dr. Turley's video, these people, their negligence and their incompetence is borderline criminal. And that these people should be removed. And we're not talking about no plebiscite either. Yeah, because Jesse Waters, in a video he did, he said that, yeah, the federal government should basically take charge of the state because the people who are in charge don't know what the hell they're doing. And you know what? Being a resident of California, I wouldn't have a problem with that, as long as the federal government didn't make things worse, of course. So what's going to happen in the interim? I don't rightly know. But considering the people who are in charge of here in California, I'm not betting any money that they will basically have an epiphany and decide that everything that they've been doing wrong was wrong and they should get on the path of the angels. Nope. I ain't betting no money on that happening. All we can hope for is that these people don't make things any much worse. Now, of course, some of you are saying, how much worse can they get? Let's just say we don't want to find out. Well, that's all I got to say about the morons who are practically deliberately trying to destroy the state of California. And that's my opinion.